Picture the stark, sterile meeting rooms in Geneva where global health policy gets written. Now, contrast that with the vibrant, intensely humid, and absolutely urgent reality right now on the ground in Central Africa. Welcome to This Explainer. We're going to be breaking down the 2026 Ebola outbreak, specifically the Bundibugyo strain. Let's get right into the science, the facts, and what this actually means for the globe. Okay, let's dive into this. 246. Now, this isn't just a number, right? We're talking about 246 suspected cases coming out of the Democratic Republic of the Congo. This is exactly what triggered that massive global alarm just a few weeks ago. And it's important to remember, behind every single digit here is a real patient, a family, an entire community bracing against a terrifying unknown. The second this number hit the desks of global health officials, the entire machinery of international response just kicked into overdrive. And you know that alarm culminated in this very specific declaration from the UN News. Quote, WHO has declared the ongoing Ebola outbreak in the Democratic Republic of the Congo and Uganda a public health emergency of international concern. Okay, let's just take a breath here. Our goal with this explainer is absolute objectivity. No alarmism. A declaration like that? Yeah, it sounds terrifying. But as we'll see, it's actually a deeply clinical, operational trigger. It's designed to mobilize resources, not to cause a panic. So here's our roadmap for today. 1. The new global emergency. 2. Mapping the 2026 outbreak. 3. Understanding the Bundibugyo strain. 4. Assessing the global risk. And 5. The frontline response strategy. Section 1. The new global emergency. So what's really interesting about this is how strictly the WHO actually defines an emergency. A PHISE, a public health emergency of international concern, is absolutely not declared lightly. In this specific case, they cited rising cases, cross-border spread, and some pretty severe uncertainties about the epidemic's true scale. Basically, there are likely clusters of unexplained deaths and transmission patterns that health officials just don't have a solid handle on yet. Plus, with the high population mobility and trade links in that region, pulling this operational trigger was pretty much a necessity. But we really need to look at this comparison carefully to de-escalate any panic. A PHIC is a serious global alert for sure. It requires a highly coordinated response, but, and this is a big but, it is not a pandemic emergency. The WHO has been incredibly clear that the current situation does not meet the criteria for a pandemic, which would literally mean uncontained global spread across multiple continents. So while this is an acute, severe emergency that needs global attention, we are not looking at a pandemic right now.
Section 2, Mapping the 2026 Outbreak.
To really grasp this data, I want you to picture the densely packed, vibrant energy of Kinshasa, and then contrast that with the dry dust getting kicked up at those highly transited border crossings in Uganda. The true epicenter here is the Ituri province in eastern DRC. We're looking at 8 confirmed cases and a staggering 246 suspected cases, along with 80 suspected deaths. But here's the thing, it hasn't stayed rural. The virus is already in the capital, Kinshasa, and it's crossed over into Uganda, where 2 infected individuals are currently sitting in intensive care. This right here is exactly how a localized event suddenly balloons into a regional crisis. And behind all that data, there's a truly profound human cost. We've seen at least 4 deaths among healthcare workers. I mean, just imagine the sheer bravery of these folks. They're working intimately with the infected, looking out through these fogged-up protective visors in extreme heat. Their tragic sacrifice highlights not just the sheer brutality of this virus, but the immense, urgent need for much better infection prevention in these local health facilities.
Section 3, Understanding the Bundibugyo strain.
Okay, so the crucial point is how this actually happens. Step 1 starts in the eerie, low-light environment of the Central African rainforest. The ortho-Ebola virus naturally resides in fruit bats. These creatures have unique immune systems that let them carry the virus without actually getting sick. Step 2 is the spillover event, where it jumps to humans. And then step 3 is the human-to-human spread. Now keep in mind, this spreads strictly through direct contact with infected bodily fluids or contaminated surfaces. It does not spread through the air. The timeline of infection is an absolutely essential piece of this puzzle. At day 0, a person is exposed. The earliest possible onset of symptoms is day 2. But, and this is wild, it can take all the way up to day 21, a full 3 weeks for symptoms to finally appear. That's the incubation period. And I really want to stress a massively important scientific fact here. A person infected with Ebola is absolutely not contagious until they actually develop symptoms. So what do those symptoms actually look like? Well, initially, it's a sudden fever, extreme fatigue, muscle pain, maybe a sore throat. And this is dangerously tricky, right? Because these early signs are incredibly difficult to distinguish from common regional diseases like malaria or typhoid fever. But as it progresses, it turns into severe vomiting, diarrhea, impaired kidney and liver function, and then in the really severe cases, internal and external bleeding. 50%. That is the average case fatality rate for Ebola disease historically. Now, depending on the outbreak and the specific strain, it's varied anywhere from 25% up to 90%, but 50% is the baseline average we're looking at here. Because those early symptoms totally mimic other diseases, and because the fatality rate is so exceptionally high once it gets going, rapid diagnostic testing in those first few days is quite literally a matter of life and death.
Section 4.
Assessing the global risk and medical reality.
This brilliantly illustrates the specific danger of the 2026 outbreak. If we step into the clinical, rapid response labs right now, we'll see we are not dealing with the Zaire Ebola virus, the one that caused the massive 2014 outbreak and actually has approved vaccines like Urby. Nope, we are dealing with a Bundibugyo strain. And right now, there are 0 approved vaccines or specific therapeutic treatments available for it. We are relying entirely on supportive care and the desperate rapid acceleration of clinical trials.
But despite this really severe medical reality, the WHO does not recommend any restrictions on international travel or trade at this time. And I want to reiterate this to ground your own global risk assessment. The science shows us that closing borders just disrupts supply chains and crucial humanitarian aid without actually doing much to effectively stop the virus. Surveillance and preparedness, those are our best tools right now, not travel bans. Section 5. The Frontline Response Strategy. Way beyond the sterile labs in Geneva, there is just this immense human resilience on the ground. Picture rapid response teams quite literally building isolation wards in the mud of the Congo Basin. The Joint Africa CDC and WHO response strategy is hyper-focused right now. They're ramping up massive contact tracing, improving basic facility hygiene, and providing vital, early intensive supportive care, mostly rehydration. That single, simple step of rehydration drastically improves a patient's survival rate, even when we don't have a specific cure. But here's the reality. All the medical science in the world cannot stop this virus without this final critical piece. The UN News noted, quote, community engagement, including working with local and religious leaders, is considered critical to controlling the outbreak. You have to understand, in regions dealing with a complex history and shifting trust, social mobilization is the ultimate shield. Building trust is what actually ensures people seek care and adhere to safe burial practices. The community itself, they are the true frontline.
Which leaves us with this final provocative thought. With a virus moving faster than our vaccine trials, are our global health systems truly ready to outpace the next outbreak? The situation in the Congo Basin shows us the phenomenal, undeniable resilience of humanity, but it also really exposes the fragile gaps in our global medical readiness. Thank you so much for engaging with this explainer today and for really diving into the science behind the headlines with us. Stay curious, stay informed, and we'll catch you next time.